Okay, let's get started with the Nantucket Conservation Commission meeting for November the 30th. We are recording, and if anybody is recording, please let us know. And if you have a cell phone, please put it on silence mode. And we will get started with the public meeting, public comments. Do we have any public comments? Very good, excellent. So now we're going to the public hearing, notices of intent. We have a couple continuances. Edwin Snyder RT, 2 Brox Court, continued until January 4th. And Sunset House LLC, 15 Hallowell Lane, is continued till December 14th. The third item on the agenda is Burke, 37 Gardner Road. They're withdrawing their application. So, do we have to vote on?
Yes, you have to
okay, so
have a
we
motion
need
to
a
accept
motion
the
to
withdrawal.
accept the
Move to
withdrawal.
accept the withdrawal.
Second.
Second, all those in favor? Aye. That is withdrawn. So we're going to start with Hallover LLC, 165 Walwinet Road.
For the applicant, Don Bracken of Bracken Engineering. This property has been before you a few times within the past year or so. This project is unrelated to the septic system or the additions to the house. What we're proposing is to extend the existing wooden boardwalk that's already on site 28 feet to the top of the dune scarp, and then to get down the dune scarp rather than walk and cut the trail that they're currently doing, a removable aluminum stairway. We did receive a letter from Natural Heritage for a no-take with conditions. Those conditions are that no work is to be done between April and the end of August, I believe, and that the removable stairway has to be in by April 1st. So the resource areas that are affected are the beach, the dune, and land within storm flowage.
So this, I can't tell from this photo, is there already a path that goes, they've obviously...
From the end of that boardwalk, correct,
Great.
it goes down.
Yeah.
A footpath they've been
A
walking.
footpath,
Yeah.
correct.
Do we have any questions from the board?
This is all through, the boardwalk is all through Dune?
Yes, correct.
I can't necessarily tell. It is going to be elevated so sand can pass under.
Yes, there's a note on the cross-section, the elevated 12 to 18 inches.
Okay. Oh, I see it now.
Right now it's sitting on the Dune, isn't it?
It's on post, but it's almost on the dune, I think. There is a note that it's going to step up to achieve that separation.
So you're gonna lift the old boardwalk too then, or are you just gonna raise the new?
Just the note, yeah. And the surface will be similar to what's there.
Other questions? Questions from the public? Okay. So, seeing no more questions, do we have everything we need to close?
Yes.
Are you ready to close?
We're ready to close?
Someone make
Motion to close.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thanks.
62 Wall Street, LLC, 62 Wall Street.
Thank you. For the applicant, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors. This is a notice of intent filing for a project located on Wall Street. Resource area is land subject to coastal storm flowage, and this is actually the second meeting on this application. I came before you last time Unfortunately, we could not close because we did not have our DEP file number. We do have that in hand. Just to refresh your memory, this is an existing developed site that was constructed within the last probably 2 or 3 years, in which we are looking to add a proposed garage of 396 square feet at the front of the property along Wall Street. We would in turn reconfigure the existing shell driveway, constructing a new shell driveway. Part of this will be constructed on a portion of Dick Street that has been or will be acquired through the yard sale program. That section of Dick Street you see on the plan is being divided amongst the adjoining landowners. And we're also adding a raised spa on the existing elevated patio on the back portion of the lot. Again, resource area is land subject to coastal storm flowage. The garage will have flood vent, will not be an infill foundation. There will be a flood vent component of the garage structure. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding the application.
Do you suspect you're going to need any dewatering?
Yes, I think we had actually had dewatering on when we did the initial property. We're not going down with neither has a full foundation, so we're going down just enough to get the depth required for the building code, but we anticipate we may have some groundwater issues. They'll be handled typically in the front of the site is what we did last time, in the area where the proposed drive is how we handled it last time. Actually, it wasn't too bad last time when we did the construction. It wasn't that bad in this area, but it is a shallow groundwater table. And I think we did discuss the downspouts being tied to a subsurface system, which we have done on the existing structure already.
Oh, good. So,
Yes. Yeah.
How do you handle garages with the flood vents and all that stuff? I mean,
It's no different. The garage slab, you have the garage slab, you still have flood vents within 1 foot of the ground. Can't use the garage door to meet your flood vent requirements. So the garage door can't be a flood vent and say, I'm going to open
so
the.
it goes through the garage?
It goes through the garage.
Oh, okay,
Goes
so
through
the garage is on the ground, you just
Yep.
open it up?
Yep.
and-
Yep.
That's-
So what you typically have in a certain case, you may have the garage will be at lower level with a crawl, and then you may have a elevated floor above it. But it's just an open flood vent, no different than you would on a foundation. The one requirement being that you can't use the garage door as a flood
area,
vent.
yeah.
You can't assume that someone's going to come and open the garage door and let everything pass right through.
Yeah, and I guess that makes you worry about what's being stored on the ground of this garage. We have flooding and we have our car there, our gas cans and our herbicides, whatever. That would be something that we would have to worry about.
Yeah, no hazardous materials stored on
Ground level.
ground level.
Yeah.
Be up above flood level.
I know a lot of times we put a lot of equipment up high down here.
Well, all the
Yeah.
mechanical equipment has to be elevated
Mm-hmm.
above. So typically you're going to have, the air conditioner condensers are going to be above the hot water heater, and whatever is mechanical has to be above, duct work, so forth, all has to be above.
Yeah. In the car.
So,
Testing this is like
We put the air conditioning. That's really good.
No, and they're just gonna store all this stuff in the garage.
Any other questions?
So the raised spa nothing will be able to pass through that.
no, it's already elevated. That area, the back side of that lot is elevated already, so, yeah.
Questions from the public? No? Any other comments? Sure. Are you ready to close? Are you ready to close?
Yes, please.
We have a motion? Motion to close. Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have Nantucket Yacht Club, 4 South Beach Street.
applicant, Leo Dorian, with Blackman Associates, and attorney Arthur Reed. Just to go over the initial application, we're proposing a 3,619 square foot dormitory at the corner of Whalers Lane and South Beach Street. The first public hearing 2 weeks ago, an issue was raised regarding removal of nitrogen from the roof runoff. We were asked to quantify that amount of nitrogen, which we did. Submitted a letter on November 22nd. It's pretty de minimis amount. It's over the course of a year, you just really can't even measure it. So we just feel that the impact of any nitrogen in the rainfall hitting that roof and eventually making it into the harbor is just such that it's almost hard to measure it for that amount. It's about 9.5 ounces over a period of a year. Looking at other reports, things that affect the harbor, obviously septic systems have a greater impact on the runoff into the harbor itself and nitrogen. And again, we just feel that the amount of nitrogen landing on this roof and eventually getting in, going through the system, the town system, and going into the harbor is nil.
Did you look into the roofing materials at all?
That's part of the HDC application. Do you know what they propose? We don't know what they're going.
I think that's a very important component of this. I found a long document studying roof runoff in Washington State. And it goes through all different kinds of roofing materials and the chemicals leached from asphalt versus a cedar shingle versus copper that you might have lining under the shingles. So that sort of thing is important to know as far as what is getting into the harbor. Because really the only thing that's filtered out in the town catchment system, because it's not a treatment, it's a suspended solid. So when we're talking chemical inputs, the system's not treating that. And for a heavy rainfall event, if we're adding all of your roof runoff to a system that's already going to be overwhelmed, that's, something I think we need to really consider.
Well, again, I think because considering the square footage of the roof and the type of materials that are allowed on Nantucket, there are a whole series of materials that are imitation asphalt, different types of plastic roofs, but they're not allowed here.
Yeah.
They're just not allowed on the island. I know for a fact across the street, the original building, the original that was built in 1969 for the Whaling Museum has slate roof on it. And I believe the new museum has a slate roof on it. Again, I'd like to look at that data, but again, I just think it's just a small tributary area that's going to go in that, how do you remove it and have any kind of measurable amounts that you can determine?
That's on you to figure out. This study is like close to 500 pages of roofing materials, so it's stuff that we do need to know. Did you guys consider any on-site infiltration, any mitigation in that capacity?
Well, we would consider trying to get the roof runoff into some kind of system. It would require a pump and then a very expensive coalescing type of system. Again, we looked at let's put it this way, we looked at the volume of nitrate entering the rainwater, and we just thought it was so de minimis, such a small amount that you really can't even measure it over the course of the year.
Right, so that's atmospheric nitrogen, but there's other chemicals that can be deposited onto the roof, and part of that is just what your roofing material is and what that's treated with. Because again, it's direct discharge to the harbor, essentially.
Well, all the roofs in the streets and everything are direct discharge to the harbor downtown. And that's why the town is putting in some of these BMP structures. There's plans for more of them over in East Street Basin as well, and Commercial Street. The intention is to try to eliminate a lot of that runoff going in there.
Not increase the square footage, so that's where I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I know the aqua itself is asphalt, roofing. And actually, if you go into wood roofing, you've got down there that'd be fire treated, so.
Right. So it really depends on what you're
Yeah.
putting on there, but it's an important
Oh,
component
it
of
definitely
this.
is like a concern.
I would be surprised if they're not going to use asphalt.
I was, yeah, if they didn't use asphalt.
Yes.
Yeah, I tend to agree, especially if they're going through. But, Other comments, questions? Any questions from the public? Cormac?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Cormac Collier, Nantucket Land Council. I brought up these concerns, Leo, it was just on the nitrogen, it was just right before you came in. And I did mention that if you looked at site-specific, it was going to be fairly small. But that's not necessarily the concern, because if you permit this, tie in to the drain, you're going to have to basically permit, if somebody asks, every applicant in the coastal storm flowage area to tie into the town drain, assuming that the town will let them, but in terms of your jurisdiction, you would go ahead and allow that. So then you're no longer talking about 3,000 square feet, you're talking about the whole entire downtown area that has application for an increase in impervious surface. So that gets to be a little bit more in terms of nitrogen. The numbers are the numbers. I mean, I don't think it serves the purpose to really get into the numbers for this. It was a 1998 report that he produced. There's 2015 reports. I mentioned this, but you weren't here. We have a sampling station as part of the NADP national network, which Leo took the report from. So we have, it's a little higher, but at the end of the day, there's probably for 3,000 square feet, it's going to come out sort of the same. But
Cormac, could I interrupt on that point? Actually, the latest data is lower
it's
than the
low.
earlier.
Yeah,
so there's
it's-
less nitrogen now than there was.
because of the federal improvement.
It's gone
I
from
meant to
3 to 2
I meant to say
times.
lower. I
Yeah.
meant to say lower. Yeah, because of all the federal air quality improvements that have happened, and we're going to hope that they're going to continue to improve. But it's not great. Again, on a cumulative basis, that's our concern. We were really simply just asking for some fairly minor, easy,
Yeah.
vegetative improvements that could happen here. It doesn't have to get all of the rainwater in a 100-year storm or anything of that nature. Just some sort of first flush event would be good. And I think there's a way to do it on site. Again, if there's not a way that you think that you can do this through your your authority of a single application, I really want you to think in terms of what this sets, in terms of all the other people and applicants that are going to be then asking down the way. And my real concern is just nitrogen and the nitrates coming from the rainwater. Secondly, this is before the planning board in December. You also, in your authority, can write a letter to the planning board insisting that appropriate rainwater technologies are employed. You have the complete authority to do that. I think I mentioned this a little bit beyond your jurisdiction from a wetlands standpoint. I reminded myself again, and Jeff and I have talked about this a little in terms of expanding sort of some of your guys' reach on the island. Mass General Law, Chapter 40, your purpose essentially states that you are there to protect the natural resources of the municipality, not just the wetland resources, but you're there to protect them. It's fairly broad in terms of how you protect them, but the one jurisdictionally, the way you do have it is through the regulatory authority that you have through the bylaw and the state act. But in terms of just commenting on a planning board application, you can easily do that. That happens statewide. Normally, Concom's are asked for advice when it comes to any sort of environmental issue. That doesn't necessarily happen here. I'd love to see that start happening on a more frequent basis, or even an infrequent basis. Thank you.
Leo, is there any lawn in this area?
Just a small area right in here, and that's all.
What about in the yacht club in general?
In the yacht club across the street.
Well, it's their property. I'm just looking
Well,
at
this is all tennis court, this is all hard true, and
Okay.
the lawn area over here, which isn't part of this application, the existing building, but it's all either tennis court and just a small area.
Well, what I was thinking, if you had some lawn, you could agree not to fertilize at all on your yards, I mean, if you look at the amount of fertilizer we put on 74 square feet of lawn is the same amount that's hitting this roof. So if they would agree not to fertilize any lawns, take that 2 pounds per year off their lawn, then they would mitigate the roof nitrogen. And that nitrogen eventually just goes right. I mean, anything you put on the ground here eventually gets in the groundwater and it's out in the harbor or somewhere. So that would mitigate it. I mean, that's what I would think. It's some nitrogen going in one way versus other nitrogen coming off another way. And nitrogen is pretty much nitrogen, so.
We could agree to that, and I did speak to the facilities people over there, and I asked them if they fertilize that, and they said no. So it just gets high. It's just a small area. Again, a lot of people could walk their dog in that area as well too.
I think one of the best things we could probably do is just to eliminate lawn fertilizing in the
Yeah.
harbor watershed, period, but I don't think we can do that.
And
Right.
I don't think they do anything with this property anyway, so I don't know that it would be a change. I mean, I have to say I think you guys are getting this feeling, with no component on site to manage the water runoff, I cannot be for this project the way that it is. Because fresh water going into the harbor is technically a pollutant. You know, in a system that in a heavy rain would already be overwhelmed, we're adding more commercial square footage to that discharge area.
Well, I would almost think too that if you look at how much fresh water is landing on the harbor from the sky in a rainfall event, that's where most of the fresh water is entering the harbor by far. So it's similar to this. I mean, you look at the nitrogen that's coming into the harbor, it's landing on the harbor itself, and these additions are, maybe they could just drain it out into the yard and hopefully the yard would soak it up or something, or as Cormac says, it's the drainage facility. But if it's a big storm and there's coastal flow, that water's gonna get mixed with the coastal storm flowage no matter where they're trying
It's
to
going to
put
end up
it.
in the harbor.
It's gonna
anyways.
end up there regardless.
Yeah, actually, I was reading about, kind of curiosity, the clay courts have a water, has a drainage swale in it, doesn't it? You were saying? This one?
Around
There's
this,
an existing-
yeah.
Yeah.
This court tips back, and you can see along
Yep.
here, they have a trench drain that goes into two leach
Yeah.
pits.
What I was wondering, I mean, I don't know what the material is. I was reading about some of these courts, and I know that the standard green court now, they call them clay, is sort of misnomer, that they're crushed stone.
That's first one.
And they have a permeable rate, according to these manufacturer, of a sod lawn, of 4 inches of sod on a lawn. So I'm wondering how much of that drainage swale is actually being used is needed by the tennis court. You know, is there a possibility it could handle some of the water from the building?
Well,
Or is there a property line issue?
I spoke again to facilities people over there, and they say that there is a lot of
It does.
runoff. It does run off. You get a high intensity snow, and the water comes down.
It can't
It's
drain
just
through
saying
quick enough.
it's not
Yeah.
hurting as fast as
It shuts off
The
to the
volume
swale.
is such that it does start to flow off.
Okay.
And they have to clean that trench drain. It's only a 5-inch drain along the edge.
Can I hop in for a second? Because I think this is a very valuable discussion, but I think we also are losing track a little bit of the resource area that's in question here is land subject to coastal storm flowage and those things that are associated. And I understand that we're tying into an existing stormwater sewer that flows to a certain area and discharges to a certain area, which is not a practice uncommon on many spots of the island. I mean, we've permitted, just to come up with one off the top of my head, just up at 22 Westchester Street. They tied into the municipal stormwater sewer. And I think our issue, because that also gets down and discharges through that same general area, I think the problem that we need to deal with is the fact that our regulations don't address this situation correctly or give you the best tools to address this kind of situation as they currently are. I think if we look at it in the sense of creating some sort of performance standard that if you're going to tie into the municipal system, you have to create some sort of pretreatment option that's there, or some sort of alternative infiltration system, or there's a lot of options to deal with these things, is really what needs to happen, because right now, we don't, unfortunately, really have the regulatory authority to deal with this. I mean, if we regulated where water was going to run and get into, if you're tying into it, anytime that we've permitted something to run into a road and let it run somewhere and get into Hummock Pond or Sackatchew Pond or another wetland, it's a part of our regulations that's lacking, and it's something that's coming up more and more that I think the commission needs to step up. And I think Cormac's suggestion of, sending comments to the planning board of saying you guys need to address on-site water disposal better than we can right now, because our regulations don't really allow us to, and then also then the commission to step up and be the leader in the community to say, we need to do a better job managing our on-site stormwater systems, not just within our areas of jurisdiction, but island-wide, and in our areas of jurisdiction that we have. These are the permit requirements that we're gonna put on to tie into our stormwater system or to infiltrate in, because I think lessons learned from, 78 Union, it's now Mariner Way, 22 Westchester, all of these spots where people are trying to tie in and dealing with it, we don't have regulations that deal with these things right now. Or even to go back as far as, even Great Harbor Yacht Club, where they were doing an incredible amount of stormwater management that's there, and those systems did certain things, but they don't do some of the things that are really harming our surface waters. They're not treating nitrogen, they're not treating phosphorus, they're not doing those things that, it's an area that we need to catch up in. And this application's a perfect example of an application against the flood zone that has an impact that it could be any building downtown. It may not be to the same quantity, but it's the same style of impact that our regulations just don't address properly at this point. Hopefully at some point they will, but they just don't do it right now. I don't want to be the wet blanket on that discussion, but I mean, it's kind of the quandary that we're in, is the resource area that's applied against is land subject to coastal storm flowage. That's what we're statutorily bound to for permitting. That doesn't mean it's not a worthwhile discussion to have, but we have to keep that kind of in line with it as well.
Other questions? Any more comments, questions from the public? Okay. Seeing none.
I would say before you close the public hearing, just to throw this out there, I don't want to have Leo and Arthur stand up here for hours, but if it's something that before you guys close the public hearing, if you guys feel that this is something that's better addressed by comments from the board to the planning board, discussing that somewhat during the public hearing to let them have a chance to respond to would be an appropriate time to have that discussion, as opposed to doing it in the orders of conditions where it's an open deliberation. If you guys feel that suggestion or thought or want to comment is not what you'd like to do or not appropriate, then you guys can certainly pass that off. But since it came up, I didn't want you guys to discuss that later and not at least allow them to participate. So
I have to say that with regard to the planning board, I was going to go for the planning board a great deal, as was Leo. And planning board is always very much concerned with drainage issues on projects that come before them. And they always have the plans reviewed by the engineer at Pesci. And that's certainly a major issue for them right now. Not something that they just disregard.
Right, I don't know how much they get.
Yeah, I don't know that they have the proper tools.
Well, I don't know if they get it. Did you find them getting involved more with green spaces and
We certainly have had them
Yeah.
provide, when that's an appropriate way to handle it.
let's see any. No, don't see a positive point of doing that. I mean, there's not a lot of area here, but. No, they're working on the adjacent lot as well, but it's not really part of this application, is it?
Well, yeah, not doing,
Anything there, yeah.
no, this dormitory building is going to remain, we're not
Yeah,
proposing
exactly.
anything on
But
that
that
lot, just-
belongs to the yacht club,
Yeah,
so could you drain
Well, I'm just
over
wondering,
here in this lawn?
could they do more?
I just think there's more we could look at here.
yeah, I don't think there's any use of fertilizers on that area any
Right.
more than there is on this. It's a practical matter at the present time.
Right, it doesn't look like it. Well, we can put that in our conditions, the fertilizers. So I get the impression that there's not necessarily an interest. Send a letter to the planning board on this one, or,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't attend planning board hearings, but it seems like when we have issues with the planning board, they tend to dig in pretty deep and say, we're doing it our way, and,
yeah.
you know, we're the ones who have to sort of make the compromises, so I don't know, maybe it's worth a try, but
Well, I mean, we can request like permeable surfaces, because they've got
permeable
walkways here.
surfaces
they've
and
got-
more,
Yeah,
you know, drainage swales with
Yeah.
appropriate vegetation and stuff like that as options that we would appreciate instead
Yeah.
of,
Yeah, in that
You know.
regard, I think it'd be good.
it wouldn't hurt to try,
Sure.
yeah.
I mean, it may be something, if anything, it might foster a discussion that you guys could have as a board with the planning board to say, let's start thinking about this issue altogether.
Yeah, or
And-
maybe having an environmental planner come down and explain to the planning board how some of the vegetated water management works. And that a long-term solution, it's in fact better than some of the short-term plans we make.
We can do that.
Just want to add one further thing. I think sending out a planning letter to the planning board would be an excellent thing to facilitate further communication between the Concom and the planning board, particularly in light of the development that will happen in the downtown area. And our, NIR Winthrop Electric Company townland, or not
True.
townland, but, so there's a lot of stuff that this
Seriously,
is gonna be germane too.
Yeah.
In terms of the planning board, I'll disagree with Arthur a little bit. They don't touch nitrogen.
I don't, that's what I was concerned about.
It's
they care.
floodwater. It's
Right.
stormwater capacity and floodwater. So, for you to bring that to their attention is very important
Right.
in terms of nutrient.
Definitely.
probably especially, I mean, if there's a parking lot component, then we're talking, I think, probably a real source of chemical pollution of cars that leak a little bit, or just a little
Yeah.
bit of oil, and
Correct.
then
Right.
we're talking as, you know, probably compared to the roof tiles and stuff, it's,
Oh, easily.
And
I
it
would
just,
say that.
this allows, excuse me, Mr. Chair, allows the conversation to start going.
Right.
And it expands it from just something that seems somewhat de minimis, this expansion of their impervious surface here. But if you don't do it here, then you're not gonna do it there, and you're not gonna do it there. It's gotta be all sort of looked at as one cohesive impervious watershed, downtown watershed.
Presumably, as a result of zoning changes, we no longer are required to provide any parking in
Yeah.
connection with
I
this
can see
project.
that.
That doesn't appear to be in
Which is
here.
good, I haven't been ignoring it.
Just because the applicants also get bounced back and forth, does it make sense for us to go before the board, kind of sit with these gentlemen at the
Well, I mean,
planning board?
the whole board is on the MPEDC, so at the next MPEDC meeting, I can bring it up personally.
It may just be something that,
Puzzle letter.
it's a conversation
I
that,
think it's a good way
that
to start.
needs
I
to
think
start.
it's Right, because you're exactly right. When you do the Wilkes Square development at some point, it's going to be a whole nother, that's a huge
Well,
issue.
it's something that's also not going away in other watersheds other than the
It's not
harbor as
going
well.
Okay. Very good. Well said on that. Okay, so no other questions, no other comments? Do you have everything to close on this one?
Yes.
Are we ready to close? Would someone like to make that motion?
move to close.
Do you have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
All right, that's good.
23 Commercial Wharf, JA LLC, 23 Commercial Wharf.
Good evening for the applicant Don Bracken from Bracken Engineering. Also with me tonight is Brian Swain, attorney representing the applicant. This project, it probably should seem familiar to you. We requested a certificate of compliance for a previous order of conditions that was issued for this last week and granted by the commission. Under that previous order of conditions, no work was performed, thereby getting this certificate of compliance. This project is a new project, but very similar to the previous project. If you recall, the previous project was considered a commercial use because it was transient lodging associated with one of the inns downtown. The current proposed use is to maintain it as a single-family dwelling as it is today, keeping the existing building, but relocating the building to make it compliant with the zoning bylaws, also moving it further from the bulkhead of the coastal bank toward the road on the commercial wharf. The new foundation will be on piers. We don't have an exact detail of whether that's going to be wooden piers or concrete piers, most likely concrete, because of the difficulty of driving wooden piers on the wharf, which is filled with all sorts of different materials. The other aspect of the project is to maintain use of an existing wood platform that is over the bulkhead into the harbor. That platform has had a Chapter 91 license. Because the site, the property is in disarray and dilapidated, that platform had to be, was damaged and removed during a storm about 3 or 4 years ago. Some of the posts are still there. So under the proposed project, we're requesting to reconstruct that platform, however, in a different location further to the east to coincide with the relocation of the structure further from the westerly property line. The end result will be about an 18% increase in total footprint area for structures. We provided a table on the right-hand side of the plan that breaks down how we calculated those numbers. We're also proposing a single parking space made out of cobblestones in the grass area. Currently, that area is already, or has been historically used for parking already. We are including drainage underneath the rear deck in the form of a surface stone infiltration system with filter fabric, similar to what was already approved in the last application. The other item that's being altered is the existing 4-foot by 8-foot float. Must be out of the water right now, but is accessed by a ladder down the bulkhead. That again will be slightly relocated along with relocating the wooden platform. The site is in a velocity flood zone, which is at elevation 11. The ground at the site is between 3.5 and 4. The existing building sits on a combination of blocks, rocks, and some wooden posts. And is at an elevation of 6. The existing floor is at elevation 4.2. The proposed floor will be raised 2 feet above that to 6.2. The proposed construction will not meet the building code requirements for constructing in the flood zone or velocity zone. The architect and structural engineer will be going to the State Building Commission to apply for a variance for that. We realize that trying to get to HDC and meeting the actual flood zone requirements is going to be almost an impossible task, and I don't think anybody in the area wants to see this structure raised 7 or 8 feet above the ground from what's there. I think with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Is any eelgrass been found around under this?
No, I don't believe so. I think one of the conditions from the previous order of conditions was that it was to be reviewed prior to any construction, and or in any shellfish that would be found would be relocated at that time.
I can tell you, we actually did look at that in our site review, that general float location.
Mm-hmm.
There's no sign of eelgrass. It's in an area that's pretty heavily impacted.
Yeah.
So one thing when, years ago, I helped build Barney's deck and dock. And when we put the piles in, a lot of gas, oil, sediment came up. So is anyone get a sample or trying to clean the end before those 5 piles go in?
Yes. That wasn't brought up, and I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, well, it was when the first one went in, a lot of oil came up, so we went and talked to George Bassett, got the booms out, and contained the area. So, I'd like to see that done.
And that's a reasonable condition to have booms
It should be
set up
conditioned.
before the piles are
Yeah.
installed. Yeah.
Storage of materials?
Well, there is some space in the driveway area, but I think most materials will have to be trucked off. And there will be some material brought in, obviously, clean sand underneath the structure. When I was involved with Barney's as well next door, and it was a lot of rocks, a lot of wood, a lot of stuff had to come out,
Yeah.
before they put that foundation system in. I think this foundation system is gonna be almost identical to that one. That's what they're leaning to.
So, did you say, are there any helicals in this one? Or just a?
Well, the architect had mentioned that they would like to investigate helicals,
Yeah.
but I told them, based on the experience next door and what's already buried
Yeah.
out there, I don't think that's gonna be a real good option.
Too much carbon.
I think, they most likely, like 90% chance they're gonna have to excavate out
Yeah.
and build it from there.
What's the chances of getting the variance on the height?
So far, we've had discussions already, and it looks like it's doable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just curious.
It's gonna be a pretty fortified structure, you're not
Yeah.
gonna be able to get that.
Impact. Yeah. Other questions? Questions from the public?
For the record, Attorney Arthur Reed, representing the Torrey family, or butters on one side, and the Barney family over on the other side. First of all, I may have missed it, but I don't think I did. I didn't find a waiver request in the materials file. Clearly, this is a waiver project, because any work that would be done would be within 50 feet of the resource area, which in this case would be the bulkhead and land under the ocean. And I think that there should be a waiver request in the file. I think I understand what the waivers are that they're asking for, but I think you usually require that as a matter of protocol. One question that I have of the applicant, and I don't know if you have the answer now, but it would be good to know for sure, is when the existing platform went away, how long ago? I don't think it's 5 years. If it were 5 years, I think there would be a question of whether it's abandoned, and therefore the existing grandfathering for it, apart from the license issue, it does have a license, but as far as its existence with regard to the wetland regs are concerned, if it had been out for 5 years, then I think that there would be an issue about it having been abandoned. Again, I don't think it's that long, but I don't have the information, and I would assume that the applicant would be able to come up with that and report back. I had a conversation with Mr. Barney today, who is very much concerned about the fact that not only the floating dock will remain, but will actually be removed or moved closer to his property. He said that that's been a problem in the past, and that is not a grandfathered structure, nor is it in the license that was issued back in 1963, I think, for the platform. He said that that was put in by the former owner, Stephen Walker, approximately 10 to 12 years ago, and that there have been problems with it when Walker owned it before the present owner had it, in which it broke loose on a number of occasions and caused damage. And now it's going to remain if this is approved and in fact be closer. That is a matter of great concern to Barney's. A number of other issues that relate to this, as far as waterways issues are concerned, the moving of the house and so on, and the fact that having additional living space on the first floor, and that the house will be in a different location from where it now is, and how that interfaces with the harbor overlay plan and the overlay zoning district, as well as with the waterways issues, which have similar provisions discouraging single-family residential use and construction of new residential structures on what is basically a filled pier. That's it for now.
I may respond to a few of those. You did ask for the waiver. It's in the project description at the very end.
Okay.
So it has been requested. There certainly hasn't been any abandonment, I think, of the Chapter 91 license of that deck. For one thing, the project didn't go forward. The order of condition that expired because the project has been in litigation because of an appeal on the planning board special permit. And any other zoning related issues, I think, will be addressed at the Board of Appeals hearing that's coming up
Next week.
And as far as the relocation of the structure, again, I think as far as this commission is concerned, we think it's an improvement because we're pulling the building further away from the bulkhead. We're also providing drainage. We're also constructing a building that's going to be off the ground and not going to be hazardous if there is a storm in that area. The platform does not have a Chapter 91 license, but it has been there. Was approved on the last order of conditions. We still have to complete the Chapter 91 process at some point, but this is really the first step for us to get the order of conditions for the proposal work. That's the plan.
Did you get pretty much everything?
I can actually add to that a little bit. We actually looked into the platform too, because we had some of the same questions that Arthur did. And we found on the aerial photographs, the aerial from 2012, that the platform was present there.
Still there, then?
Yeah. It did disappear sometime in between 2012 and 2013, but it was pretty solidly there in the early part of 2012. So it's still within that 5 years.
How much is the building moving?
Right now, it actually sits on the bulkhead. The bulkhead supports the rear portion of the building.
It's
There's
tough
not
to see a scale.
dimension
Yeah,
right there. I would say about 3 feet approximately.
It's moving, but there'll still be roof coverage over that portion? Is that what I'm seeing, that the porch is a covered porch? Right.
Correct. Only up to the face of the
Right.
bulkhead. The portion over the harbor is open.
Does it move away from the property line as well?
Yeah, so Right now, it's 1.2 feet from the lot line, it's gonna be 5.6 feet.
And does this lot slope towards the harbor, or what do we have? on
Yeah,
here?
if you look at the existing conditions, it shows some spot grades. This is the top of the concrete cap is about elevation 3.7. And the grade at the front, 3.8, 3.8, 12.1, 3.4. If you look at the site, there are some, actually underneath the building is a depression itself, so. And I think there's a lip on that wall, so most of the water is already contained on the property.
And you're gonna level, you're gonna put stone underneath.
Correct. Yeah, now the reason why we put in there, final design to be determined, because we're not sure. We're gonna try to get, see if they can get gutters approved to be able to collect it, but they may not. So if, whether it's gutters or not, it'd be a drip trench drain in front of the building and a pipe underground to collect it and bring it to that infiltration system.
Other questions? Questions from the public? Are we looking for any unanswered questions here? Does anybody want more information?
So it's an 18% increase?
Right, when you add up the porches, the building, the steps, we're still substantially below what the zoning allows.
I assume what they're driven by is the limitation of 100 square feet in additional first floor residential space under the harbor overlay district regulations. So, although I would, again, whether that applies as an addition in the light of the fact that it's effectively a new structure because it's a new location, is something for another day.
This is a small structure, 447 square feet.
Small lot.
Yeah.
Small.
Yeah.
It is a small.
It's all small.
Yeah, I'm also wondering about the establishment of the new grass and what the plan is for that. If we're trying to make a lawn there,
Yeah, right now we're just showing it as proposed line, and it's attached on the plan. So hopefully you can see what area.
yeah. I'm just wondering if that's gonna need a soil amendment before you maybe are laying out sod, or if you're putting irrigation up there, or what sort of changes we're having.
Right now, there's no irrigation proposed, so if you want to put that as a condition.
Because just when I'm looking at your soil boring,
That was down, actually, at the base of the wall at low tide,
okay.
to have an idea if there was any fill on that side of the wall. That was a request during the last hearings.
Well, Jeff, I don't see, no one wants any extra information? Okay.
Let's say all of the filing requirements have.
Yeah, okay. Ready to close?
Any voice?
Would someone like to make the motion?
Motion closed.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Holly Farm Realty Trust, 290 Pulpus Road.
Busy night tonight.
Again, Don Bracken from Bracken Engineering for the applicant. This project has a little bit of history, going back to about 2007 since we've been involved with it. There are currently two orders of conditions that were issued for this property. One for additions to the main house upgrade of the existing septic system and another separate one for the garage. The additions have been completed, the garages have been completed, but for whatever reason, the owner decided not to put the septic system in, so they've gotten some pleasant letters from the Board of Health instructing them that they had, within a certain time period, had to upgrade their septic system. It is in the Nantucket Harbor watershed area. So what's before you is a separate notice of intent just for the septic system. We have altered the design from the previous plans that were approved, and all have expired since then. It includes an IA, nitrogen reduction system, and which was on the last plan, but the difference on this plan is that the soil absorption system is now a drip dispersal system, which is shallower, doesn't require as much cover, less setbacks to the foundation, and at the end it treats the effluent better than a more conventional system. So the system, as you can see, is shaped to be outside the 100-foot buffers from a bordering vegetated wetland to the north and the two isolated wetlands on the south, from upside down to the east. That's going straight up. Yeah, all the work is already in disturbed areas, in lawn areas, proposing to put a silt fence at the lawn line of where the construction will take place, near the bordering vegetated wetland. We'll be back after this gets resolved to straighten out the other outstanding ones. But this has to come first.
So there's a lot of like piping involved with this.
Correct.
Is there any way to monitor like the health of those pipes?
Because it's an IA system, it has to have a maintenance contract with
Okay.
someone that operates the system, and they have to check it. I believe in the maintenance 4 times a year, and then it gets reduced to 2 times a year. They're going to know if the pipes, you're going to see something coming out of the ground. You're gonna smell it. It's a pressure system.
Something we've done in the past is to require sleeving, but typically only within the 25. Yeah, this is all. They use plastic pipe for this?
Yes.
That's all plastic, so it won't decompose or
Correct.
anything like that.
The force main won't come in sections, it'll come in a row. So it'll be all one piece. So less of a chance of having any issues with itself.
Yeah, it's like a funny. Yeah, I'm getting. So here's the HUD. What line is this?
Diving into the.
Yeah.
So this, I've highlighted it, because of the intersecting buffer zones,
Get double line.
this is, yeah.
Okay. And what is this one?
That's a well protection.
Other questions? Questions from the public? Do we have everything we need to close?
Yes.
Would you like to close?
Yes, we would.
Motion closed. A second? All in favor? Aye. Very good.
Thank you.
Nantucket Island Resorts, 50 Easton Street.
color or something.
You'll look looking for it.
Thank you.
Glad to see you made it. Plenty of time. Sure, I'll take it. We don't really take them anymore, but I'll save you the trouble of
That's
hauling
where
it
the
back.
color coding helps.
I agree.
Original signature page.
Perfect.
I promised them. Okay, great. Hi, I'm Katie Barnacle, Senior Wetland Scientist with AECom, and we're in front of you tonight to do some maintenance dredging at the White Elephant. We've done this in my lifetime in 2002 and again in 2008. And at that time, in 2008, the bulkhead was rebuilt, so a lot of the sand and material that was coming out from behind the bulkhead is no longer there. But we are still getting some accretion from the north-northeast, and it's blocking about 2 or 3, almost even 4 of the slips at the finger piers. And you can see up in the upper corner where it's crosshatched, that's the area that we're looking at proposing to dredge. We updated the bathymetry, we updated the shellfish survey, we updated the eelgrass survey. I think in the dredge footprint we found 1 quahog, and we only found like a floating home of the eelgrass. So there's none of those resource areas there. I believe there is some eelgrass beds about greater than 100 feet that way. We did find those, I think back in 2002 when we did a dive then. This is maintenance dredging. This area's been dredged. I believe I found some permits back in the 60s, definitely the 80s. And we have a Chapter 91 permit that's still valid from 2008. We applied for the water quality certification, and that public notice was in the paper this Wednesday. And we have a letter from the Division of Marine Fisheries confirming the time of year restrictions for winter flounder. So all dredging has to be done by January 15th. So it being on the cusp of December 1st, we're hoping the planets align and the weather holds out, and that we'll be doing the dredging in January when all appeal periods and everything have been completed. So we are asking if we can get, if the commission wishes, that the order of conditions can be issued sooner than later to start that that process going. The water quality can't be issued until, or is not valid until we have a valid order of conditions. Before the dredge spoils, we put on Children's Beach. We dewatered there. We did a hydraulic dredge, dewatered at Children's Beach, and left some of the material on Children's Beach for beach nourishment. The remainder went to, I believe it was Dionis Beach back in 2008. There was a bathhouse that was removed,
Yes.
and that material was backfilled, I think, where that is. There's no more room on Children's Beach, and it's such a small area of dredging. Before we dredged this whole area, 1,500 cubic yards. We're only proposing to dredge 359, a quarter. So we can do it mechanically and have roll-offs on the barge and have it dewatered right from the barge. Then we can move the barge over to the steamship authority and offload it into trucks. The big question is, what do we do then? We were hoping to use the sandbank that the town has now at the DPW. We did confirm through the director that there's no room because it's being reserved for the Pulpus Harbor dredging. But we're really hoping maybe we can find something to work out, maybe at the landfill. So right now we don't have a location where the dredge spoils are going to go. We hoped that was it. We thought we had a confirmation, but we didn't. So there's some miscommunication there. So right now I don't have that, and I'm wondering if that could be conditioned. That we'll work with the commission and we find out where it can go. You know, if more wetlands work has to be done for that location, or if it's I'm hoping it's an upland location, clean and clear, you know, with no wetlands issues. But I'm hoping that we can condition that.
I think to answer that question, I think if you were wanting to condition that, it'd be kind of similar how we deal with draining pools. That was kind of a weird comparison, but I think you could simply condition it that any of the spoils post-dewatering would have to be placed in an area outside of your jurisdiction. And then any upland area is fair game. It's not really your concern. If it required, then if the spot they found was in a wetland area, that would require amending the permit to do that. So we've done that before.
My question, because it sounds like you're only planning to dredge this triangular area in
Yes.
that corner. For some reason on the plan, that's not clear to me. You know, like I can see the area, but your limit of dredging is so much wider. Yeah.
Oh, this
you
is our
know.
previous I'm sorry, I didn't clarify that. This is the previous dredge footprint for 1,500 cubic yards. Right now, because of the updated bathymetry, we realize we only have to do the smaller area. But, you know, maintenance dredging is one of those things that you want to hold on to if you have to, because you can't do any new dredging.
Right.
So we want to continue the maintenance dredging. You hoped we wouldn't, but there's certainly some action going on here. But if we had to in the future, we would be allowed, hopefully, to do any dredging within this footprint. Obviously, we have to get all the permissions, but that was what was done in previous
Years.
2002 and 2009.
It's kind of memorializing the area
just
going
have
forward.
to-
And the work that they're asking for specifically in this case is just for the
Right.
wedge.
Very small. Makes sense. Other questions?
Are you, when you dredge, do we usually put like siltation booms around this? Did you say you were gonna do that already?
Yeah,
Just missed it.
because when you dewater, you don't want that, whatever's in that water to, hopefully it's already settled at that point, but whatever is coming off of that, you don't want that to start stirring things up. So we will use those best management practices around the barge. AGM Marine's gonna do this, they've done it in the past years.
I've done it. I
Yeah,
used to work for them.
yeah, what's that?
I used to work for them.
Oh, did you?
I did it in the 80s.
Oh, did you? Here? They did a good job, so,
Touched it up through a number of years.
yeah.
Well, I don't know much about shellfish, but if you look at, from what I could gather from the reading, you sampled 29 quarter square meter plots, which is about, it's a little bit less than 5 square meters total, and that's about 51 square feet out of almost 2,800 square feet. So they sampled a pretty small amount and found one quahog. But if you divide that out, there's somewhere around 55 quahogs in that, if their sampling is accurate, which, given that it's a pretty, they found one quahog, I doubt that we could really, if this was going to a publisher, they'd send it back, you know, I mean. But so the quahogs are pretty sparse, but is 55 quahogs a number to think about, or is that so small it doesn't matter? I have no idea.
To put my other hat on for a minute, that number is very small. I'll put this is an area by the survey that they did. They could actually have, by shellfish count, qualified this as an area suitable for aquaculture, which is usually an area that's completely
Pretty well devoid.
devoid of shellfish.
And the other question I had was with the chemical analysis. Even though it is very sandy, they're still, they're going to withdraw a lot of sand out of there. And, you know, there was a small percentage of that was silt, somewhere around, what, 10% silt, I think? And if there was going to be chemicals, it would be in that silt. And maybe it would be worthwhile just to test the silt to see if there's any chemical in that silt. I mean, I know you said that according to some standard it qualifies as sand, but there is a fraction of silt.
Right, it passed the percentage of sieve, the number 200 sieve, and that meets the water quality standards. So the state doesn't require that material be tested. You know, 'cause not much is binding to the sand. There's a little bit of silt there. There's a little bit of silt everywhere, but we're not required to test for that because it is such a small percentage. And We do have to do a due diligence as part of the water quality certification, so in addition to the sampling, they also ask you, have there have been any spills? Have there been any record outwashes from any stormfall events? And we've already researched part of that. We haven't completed it. You know, we need to just talk to the fire chief and check their records to see if there's anything that's not reflected in the state records. So there is like another component to make sure that, you know, Joe Schmo's tank up the street, you know, oil tank, isn't leaking, and we're going to be digging that up.
Or like every boat that
Yeah.
moves through that space or
Yeah.
truck that
Yeah.
dumps the boats back. Certainly the potential in this area is pretty high.
And certainly if there is some evidence that something's happening when we're dredging, not excavating, then we can certainly take care of it, well, not take care of it at that point, but address it at that point. You know, we can stop the dredging and see just what's going on. You know, if there's a big sheen, I'm not sure what else, smell? Probably more of a sheen that you would see.
So you pipe the dredge material over to Children's Beach, is it, or is
Yeah.
it trucked over? It's piped and then you'll truck it off-site?
When we dewatered at Children's Beach, it was piped over there and dewatered. Now we can just do it on a barge and not even touch Children's Beach because the profile really can't handle any more sand. And then we'll just take the barge over to steamship, and then it'll be trucked off to the upland area. So this is a lot less of an impact than we had previously done. Obviously, it was beneficial reuse at the beach, and it was great to use that as dewatering, but thankfully we don't have that volume to deal with right now.
And this water is deep enough to handle that barge without it sitting on the bottom then?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
good decks there.
Any other questions? Questions from the public?
Can you give this sand to the town then? I mean, you basically donate it to the town?
That's what we would do if there's room. Right now, it doesn't look like there's a home for it. But I think in the next couple of weeks, we'll be working with other people in the town, or, you know, with the DPW, the landfill. The landfill said that they would ship it off for $60 a ton, or cubic yard or something, which is expensive. And it seems silly to ship it off when it's clean sand and someone can use it somewhere. We just have to find a home for it. So.
Surprise.
Seems
Yeah,
like
you'd
there's
be
a
better
lot
off
of
shipping it and
nursery
selling it.
projects on the island that would sooner
Yeah,
or later.
sand's a limited resource.
If
Yeah.
anyone knows, please feel free to give me a call.
I'm curious if one of the,
I'm surprised that
Well,
you
kids would
you
take
guys
it.
as an entity can't use
Somebody
it.
partners, somebody.
yeah,
Yeah, Seth might.
I think one of the kids might be able to take it.
I'm sorry?
One of the sand pits might be able to take it.
Oh, okay, all right. We'll track that down then. I know it's, you know,
Pretty
the
sad.
Pocus Harbor dredging, that's a big deal. That's a
Right.
big amount, and I'm sure they don't want to give up any room because
Right,
they
that's
need
gonna
that.
be a lot.
Yeah,
This is relatively small.
but we'll check around. I'm sure we can
Okay.
find something.
No more questions? Well, do we have everything we need to close?
Yes.
Are you ready to close?
Yes, please. We have the DEP file number.
Yeah.
We have all of the required information.
Excellent. Okay, would someone like to make that motion to close?
Move to close.
Second. All those in favor?
You know, we can grind the sand up and sell it as Nantucket sand.
I've never heard anyone saying they didn't know what to do with it.
Don't take it out of state to get it.
That is the new one.
Once I could see it.
Yeah.
Bring it
Great,
to my
thank you.
Let's store it. Turn around and sell it.
Don't put it in my place.
Thank you.
Amended orders and conditions. Hither Creek Boatyard, 20 North Cambridge Street.
Thank you. For the record, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors representing the applicant. What's the,
Yeah, maybe I can.
what was the work, haven't worked on washdown, I didn't know.
Oh,
I my record.
yeah.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
We might have to wait on this one.
Where's Ian when we need him?
Well, and,
Yeah, I think last time I think I
I recuse myself.
in light of that, and also, we do have some questions we'd like to answer at Division of Marine and Fisheries. I'm sure we can respond to some questions I'm sure the Land Council is gonna have. I think we would be asking for a continuance, or whether we've even opened it, I guess, at this point.
No, I would say if you want to just request a continuance, it would just be.
Okay.
There's no information.
And then should we see if actually David or Joe can sit on,
Maybe in between now and the next meeting, we should be.
we'll figure that out.
I can suss that out.
Okay.
Right. So do you want to request a continuance to 2 weeks?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll continue that for 2 weeks, which is,
Well, Ian and,
Ben will be back for sure. I thought Ian was going to be here this evening, but I will track him down.
okay, thank you.
okay, we'll continue that till the 14th.
Sorry about that, everybody.
Who was in question, both you and you, so there are the people.
Troublemakers.
Potential.
I didn't. A lot of buildings.
Yeah, okay,
That seems kind
so we're going into the public meeting. Orders of conditions.
Sorry, I handed everyone kind of fancy this stapler.
I know, I noticed that.
We have stapleless staplers now at our copy machine.
Saving
of.
natural
Have any
resources.
name for it, Staples.
Yeah, the copy machine display actually calls it a stapleless stapler.
Oh, that is weird.
It's amazing.
I like that.
The unstable.
It only works on apparently like 5 to
Couple
7 sheets or
pages.
less. Baby steps.
I like it. So, Holliver LLC, 165 Walnut Road.
So that walkway and stairs.
So just real quickly, I'll run through that. Conditions 20 and 21 that are listed there relate specifically to the requirements from natural heritage. So it's that time of use restriction from April 1st to August 31st. And then the second part of that's one of their standard conditions that any change requires it to be filed with the Division of Fisheries and Wildlife as well. And then I just simply added 22 asking for photographs to show the general condition of that area yearly. I don't think too much else.
Does anybody have any comments? Okay. Someone like to make a motion?
Motion to approve is drafted.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. 62 Wall Street.
All right. I'll let you sign there, Mr. Chairman.
So, this one I can't entirely remember if we were supposed to add the condition for like subsurface drainage from the garage roof runoff, or if that was already in the plan.
I want to say that was already.
You said it was
In
the
the
plan, but the house had it
The
already.
house had it, and I remember asking, and he said, we're okay with that condition, but I don't remember that it was
Well, here,
specific.
why don't we'll just make it real simple. We'll add a 19. The garage. Roof runoff. all be infiltrated. As part of the house infiltration system. We'll take the guesswork out by just saying it has to be.
And this is the no storage of hazardous materials on the like ground of the garage
Yeah,
one as well.
off the floor.
Yeah.
20.
Yeah.
Yep, so the 20 no. Hazardous materials shall be stored on the floor of the garage.
On floor or below flood line?
Yeah.
Oh.
Just below,
Stored.
yeah,
Yeah.
stored
I'll
up.
change it to, so no hazardous materials shall be stored in the garage beneath the flood elevation.
Yeah. That's nice.
I'm just picturing like a giant red line going around the
I was
garage.
gonna say, we should make,
It's the shelf.
to have the flood, the line
Have the red-
established.
The red shelf.
Certified.
above the line.
You can tell by the outlets inside the garage.
Yeah.
They'll all be above. Nothing below the outlets.
That's the paint shelf, right above the outlets.
That's right. Hanging from the ceiling. Or stored in a little dinghy that will float out the door safely.
I need to put a float in the garage.
Great.
For the door, a float switch, so open the door when water starts to come in.
Noah's Ark.
Yeah, that's what I'm picturing.
Okay. That sounds about it. Would someone like to make a motion with the addition of conditions 19 and 20 for infiltration and storage of hazardous materials relative to the flood level?
Move to issue as amended.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Nantucket Yacht Club, 4 South Beach.
All right, so just real quickly, from our discussion, I think the blank septic is doing this. Is going to add a number 19 that no fertilizer or irrigation is permitted. Since that what was discussed.
I mean, we want to put in something about permeable surfaces, walkways, and, I mean, we can, planning board may say otherwise, but if we put it in,
Well, if you put that all,
playing back and forth with them again.
well, they'd have to come back and amend or
Yeah.
modify it. You could put something that says, all walkways should be pervious.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Maybe they'll miss it.
If you guys were considering still sending correspondence to the other
Yeah.
board, if you guys, that would also require a motion to do at some point.
Okay.
That might get the hand motion.
Okay. Do that now. Someone like to make a motion? for-
Motion to write a letter
Write a letter, send a letter to the planning board?
to the planning board.
Okay. Second.
Concerning drainage.
Yeah, concerning drainage.
Drainage and walkways.
Yeah, permeable surfaces and see what happens.
And like nutrient treatment.
Try that one.
Maybe we should be specific on what we're gonna add to this.
Well, I think I know the broad enough topic from our discussion and what's there. I think the instruction's enough to write a letter to the planning board. I'll try to get a draft by the end of the week for everyone to review, but I'll try to get everything kind of encapsulated. And then at some point, if no one has any comments back, I'll make you come down to the office and sign it. We'll send it to the planning board.
Cool.
Okay,
Okay.
so we'll look for that.
Just remember when you send your comments back to me, just to send it only to me.
I'll make a comment on the comment. Okay, so we have a second
Second.
on that one? All those in favor of the, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
And we still need to deal with,
So we still need this.
still need to deal with the water.
We still have this one, so now, any other comments on the yacht club project? Okay.
I mean, is there any way we can ask them to periodically test the roof runoff for what's coming off of there, or is that totally out of the realm of?
So much possible. Yeah, it's a tough one.
I mean, I guess you'd have to figure out. The problem is, and I totally understand the question, I completely agree that it's something that's worthwhile. The difficulty is the resource area in question. I know this is a terrible answer to this question, but the resource area in question is land subject to coastal storm flowage. And I understand the idea of an impact coming from somewhere and transporting itself to somewhere else. It's just the way our regulations are currently put together to link a condition related to the performance standards for an area that's not, you're not directly in, is very difficult to do.
So is that something, since the town is essentially allowing more impact to a resource area of ours, that they should come to us and say, we're adding this square footage onto our system? Because there is a resource area, like where the water is discharging by Children's Beach.
No, I understand. I think I just, can you say that question
So
one more time?
since essentially you're saying this project is only impacting the resource area within the lot and not what's happening with the water that's going into the town's pipe, right? We're essentially wiping our hands clean and saying that's a different resource area where this water is discharging and not within the purview of this
Yes and no
application.
is the answer to your question, because it's kind of the age-old question for commissions, and this is the part that's difficult, and the part that our regulations don't do a good job of addressing is anytime we're talking about an input, I know this is a very direct discharge that gets into a system that flows and then is a direct discharge into the harbor. Anytime we have a project that includes some sort of impact that can relocate. So if you put fertilizer down, you can make the stretch and say groundwater goes to the pond or to the harbor and deal with those things. The commission hasn't typically contemplated the impact of that activity as it relates to that watershed level impact. That's not something that is really contemplated by our regulations, and that's kind of what we've run up against here, is we're looking at a very direct watershed level impact on a lot that is very specific to which resource areas are in question. It's something that we need to find a way to resolve and address, because it's something that, as we go forward and addressing things like fertilizer and stormwater impacts, we have to be able to deal with those things better. But to put a condition on a project, the conditions have to be put in place to protect the performance standards that are in question on the project. And I'm not sure that even with findings, and I thought about it a lot to make findings to get to that, is we would have to make that finding for every project and then contemplate that. I think there are better ways to address these kinds of things regulation-wise than trying to attack it this way. I see the problem. I totally understand it. It's just something that is difficult to do. I mean, to compare it to like Great Harbor Yacht Club, just kind of finds two yacht clubs, is the Great Harbor Yacht Club, where they were also dealing with stormwater management on site, is they were also in the buffer zones to Coastal Bank, Coastal Beach, bordering vegetated wetland, where the interests that are protected by those resource areas include groundwater and surface water and those things, the flood zone simply doesn't accommodate that. And getting the flow to deal with that and tying those together is where there's a break in our bylaw and regulations right now. That's kind of the part we're stuck with. I think that's the part that we need to work towards fixing,
Yeah.
so we can address this better. I could be on my own thinking that, but that's kind of my thought, is that's the whole.
Numbers
And-
must be known. I mean, this is such a common question about roof runoff and asphalt roads, and I'm sure these numbers are been
Well,
studied. I'm sure
I
that-
think it's really too, and not to stay on my soapbox, I think it's a symptom of a bigger problem that the town as a whole hasn't contemplated stormwater management in the sense of nutrient inputs or chemical inputs. It's always been a capacity issue. It's how much water
Right.
can you get away from where you need to go, and for lack of better terms, let's take out the big stuff that's there and get it, and maybe take out some of the oil and take out some of the other things that separate. But thinking of stormwater on a nutrient level and a nutrient input level, I think is something that's a seemingly new concept to address for the town
Yeah.
and all of the other entities. I mean, the fact that, you can talk to planning right now and they say things like they encourage natural drainage facilities whenever possible, but not all natural drainage facilities are the same. Vegetation makes a big component of those and what's there and how they function. It's a gap townwide that needs to get fixed. I mean, as the town has spent a lot of effort on fertilizers and sewers and those things, stormwater is kind of the missing puzzle piece to fix.
Right, especially in a direct discharge capacity.
And I think now is a good opportunity, because with the flood zone having changed and a lot of houses and other structures going to be moving into flood zone compliance in the next, 5 to 10 years, now is a good time to start addressing how to better deal with the impacts of those structures, because a lot of those structures also tend to expand when they go up.
And is this something we need the DPW to come in and say, how many properties are you going to allow to tie into this to increase, where's the line?
I think the problem is there needs to be a real honest effort to permit these tie-ins. That's part of the real problem. I don't want to continue on my soapbox, but right now, if you put a sump pump in your basement and you tie it into the stormwater system, no one knows.
No one knows.
Unless they see you do it.
Right.
And to think how many people are pumping their basements in the harbor watershed and pumping it into both the sanitary sewer and the stormwater system is probably a very high number. And that, in and of itself, is part of the issue, is that the inputs that are going into these systems, a lot of them just simply aren't known. And that's part of the problem. I mean, we see it. I mean, you can pick your catch basin downtown to open up, but a lot of them you're going to find multiple pipes coming in that you don't know where they're from. They just have been installed for a long time.
I would love to cement the end of those and see what happens.
So, yeah. I mean, again, it's a problem that needs to get addressed townwide to deal with all of these unpermitted things. I mean, it's pretty shocking to see the flows that go into the sewage treatment facility during big rainstorms and how they spike.
It messes up the
Because
whole treatment system.
this things connect that shouldn't, and things that are there. I mean, it's something that was overlooked for a long time.
Yeah.
Or wasn't considered to be important to permit or important to know. And now in hindsight, it would have been very important to know and to think about. We're still on the order, though.
Yeah, I was about to say, we still got,
A 20-minute speech.
yeah, very good. Okay. Unless there's any more additions, comments, would someone like to make a motion with the inclusion of condition 19 for impervious walkways.
Oh, and there's also, that's actually condition 20.
That's
Number
19.
19 was no fertilizer
Oh,
irrigation.
I was behind, and number
No
20.
fertilizer or
No
irrigation.
fertilizer. Backward. Right, no fertilizer. Is that,
Or irrigation.
oh, okay. Okay, so let me try again here.
You could just say as amended. It's
Hold
totally
on to that. Okay, so, do we have anyone who wants to make a motion with the addition of conditions 19, irrigation and fertilization prevention prohibited, and number 20, the impervious walkways, surfaces?
Move to issue as amended.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that one passes with me. Commissioner Harrisman opposed? Let's see. 23 Commercial Wharf, say LLC, 22 Commercial Wharf.
This is another one that further discussion, number 21, that no fertilizer irrigation.
Do we want to condition the potential oil boom, or?
Well,
It's 20.
That's
I put
20,
it
yes,
there.
it is, it's still, I wasn't sure.
I can
The
put it,
flotation device on them is considered an oil.
Oh, okay.
The curtain hangs from
but I
it.
can put a silk curtain slash.
Oil, yeah. Turbidity curtain, silk curtain,
Okay.
so the same.
Yeah, usually that float on top is splendid.
It's an oil boom minus the silk curtain, it's just an oil boom. It's strap an oil boom on it, not
Same.
a silk curtain.
Is this one, because they didn't really have a great plan for gutters or downspouts? Is this something that they'll just come
No.
in and have that?
Do we put it into the gravel? I think?
They were, but they weren't,
They have to
their
get an
downspouts,
ACC.
yeah, their stuff wasn't
Yeah,
approved
they're not
yet.
sure how
Oh,
they're
okay.
gonna make 'em.
Yeah, that they
That's
come,
your point.
Should we just make a motion, a condition that the roof runoff has to be infiltrated and they can
Perfect.
Yeah,
either do
however,
it by
covers it either way.
downspouts or by their drip?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's
that
a 22.
driveway they can use.
It'd be really great to make that condition in a couple years. The roof runoff shall be put into a body retention area.
Standard.
Be great.
Yeah. Okay, so we're looking for a motion with the addition of conditions 21, no fertilizer or irrigation, and condition number 22, infiltration of roof runoff.
Move to issue as amended.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. And Holly Farm Realty Trust, 290 Pulpus Road.
All right, this one was the septic replacement. pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Septic switch. And we're losing two septic
Win-win.
systems inside the 100-foot one that's outside with pre-treatment.
Yeah, net benefit, so.
All benefits for sure. No comments, no additions. So would someone like to make a motion?
Motion approved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Nantucket Island Resorts, 50 Eastern Street.
This is the dredging project. Um, '21 and '22 are the conditions from the Division of Marine Fisheries. We normally would have it in there as well, but I don't
So it's really,
see a need to. Well, we normally include that time of year restriction, but it's from. I stole their language in this case.
Do we want to put something in about where the sand gets stored?
Oh, yes.
yeah,
So
away.
you say 24. Paul,
Spoiled.
dredge spoils shall be removed to an area outside of commission jurisdiction. And then if that changes, they have to come amend it. Just leave it on the trucks, and just barge it over to Mainland and
Park at the top of the bluff.
Just want to make sure that the
Any bluff.
oil boom and silk curtains placed around the dredge area and the barge.
Yeah, and just, I am assuming, that somewhere if oil did start to come up, that they would have to notify
oh yeah.
you.
Well, that's part of their other rules outside of ours that
Okay.
require
That's
those notifications.
Right,
to
and
go.
that's what I figured.
What were you saying about the silt around the barge?
yeah, around the barge, which will be used for dewatering because the containers will be on the barge.
Oh, right.
So not only the dredge area, but
Right,
the barge
So
itself.
to number 19, put silk curtain shall be installed to best contain the work area
But the barge.
and the barge used for dewatering.
And the barge.
And they're real good about that, these guys.
Yeah.
I would think.
They must have some kind of filters on the side of the barge, don't they then, or something, or?
No,
They
just
don't, huh?
tie off the curtains to the barge.
Really?
Not that high tech.
No, not just for sand. If it was silk, it would be a lot different.
So spoils. And silk curtains. Anything else? Okay. Seems pretty straightforward. Okay. Would
So
someone
move
like
the issue as amended.
Conditions 24 and addition 19. You have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimous. Okay. Minutes. Everyone read the minutes. Okay. Unless there's no objections, I'll approve the minutes by unanimous consent. Enforcement actions.
The one from last time made the paper, 175 Pulpus Road. So I'm waiting to hear back. I had to call into the land bank to see if they'd made any progress on that. I haven't heard back. So hopefully they're due by the next meeting. So hopefully by then we'll have something.
Reports. We don't have CPC here. I didn't have an MPEDC meeting. I don't think we have any mosquitoes.
No, but our chair is resigning as of, I think, January 1st. So anybody wants to apply to be on the Mosquito Control Commission, they should spread the word.
Commissioner comments? Thoughts? No? Okay, administrative staff reports?
No, I'll get that letter to you guys, tomorrow or the next day, for you guys to review and deal with that. But I do think, I actually had a visit from Steve Bender today that's kind of related to this. I know I never thought I would say that, but it is, his was more related to gray water from the boat basin. But I do think it's something that we should really consider, sometime in January, having a, maybe not in January, because we'll have the Wisconsin Bluff report, but maybe in February, having a special meeting to just talk about stormwater management, and to maybe invite the planning folks and Board of Health, and see who wants to come, and just have kind of an open discussion about stormwater requirements. I know it's something that Cormac and I have been talking a lot about, and it's something that's kind of the, like I said earlier, the missing piece to the septic sewers, fertilizer kind of attack that the town has been taking, and stormwater's been kind of put off, and now it's kind of hit the point where it can no longer be put off. So this board is tasked with not just managing the Wetlands Protection Act and the town bylaw, but part of your enabling legislation includes the management of all natural resources for the county of Nantucket. That I think if we ever wanted to try to really affect some change in this, that it can start here and hopefully really catch fire and take off, and hopefully we can see some interesting changes come forward and work towards better stormwater management, because right now we really don't, frankly, do any stormwater management as it relates to, the things that we spend a lot of time and effort and money managing in the harbor, like nutrient inputs. We don't really do anything. So, I think the time is right to kind of really start pushing it and see where it goes. And this is definitely, I think, the best spot to jump off from that. So, just a matter of kind of committing to do it, and then getting the people here that can help to do it, and affecting the change. And that's really how the other projects kind of started. So I don't see any reason why this one can't be the same.
So is this something we would schedule, like a workshop, and have a consultant come and say, "This, we can manage this stormwater. Look at
No.
all these great examples."
Definitely. I mean, that's something that you can have people come from off island. The first one can just be kind of an open discussion about what the town has. I mean, it can be whatever you guys want it to be. If you guys want someone to come and talk about bioretention options, there's a lot of really good people that can come do that. I know there are a couple that are going to actually be presenting some information as part of the Cape planning session that the McCoy Bay people are putting on the 6th and 7th of December. There's some talks about some of those things. So there's lots of really good resources that are there. I know Cormac has done a lot of research as far as some of these options. We've looked into some, but I think it's something that we have to start doing and start talking about, the town budgeting money to sample stormwater outfalls, if that's really an issue. I mean, it's everything really now down as small as the amount of nitrogen that comes from, de-icing pellets that get into the stormwater system, because they have a lot of nitrogen in those as well. So, it's just something that needs to start. I don't really know a better way to say it than that, but
We're behind the ball on this one,
yes.
big time.
So, and it's bigger than just roof drains. I mean, it's roads and parking, and I think with Wilkes Square coming, that as part of the planning for that, if they know that there's standards set for real stormwater management as part of that project, that's something that they can build into the design of those projects, and not get to the end and try to shoehorn something in or try to waver their way around dealing with it the correct way. So
They should be measuring now as a baseline for all those areas before they start all these changes, so. Especially Wilkes Square.
Ian sent around that information on using sort of fungal activated wood chips as a source of nitrogen remediation. And apparently they're extremely effective at taking nitrogen out of water, and I wonder if, we should,
You just,
and they've used them at Wacoit Bay, I think.
you worry if you're in like land subject to coastal storm flowage that they're gonna move.
Well, you'd almost have to run them through a cylinder or something. I mean, why not have a stainless steel tank, run it through there? I mean, you could even do it with sewage instead of these extremely expensive denitrifying systems. Run it through
Right.
wood chips and.
I tend to think, if possible, an above-ground solution with plant material tends to be better, because you help protect some habitat as well.
Yeah, I don't argue with that, but if there's no room like this place, where were they gonna put it?
That's, yeah.
Take out a tennis court.
Sacrifice.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they could have used that tennis court a little bit better. There were some better solutions on that site.
Well, that would be interesting, yeah. I mean, I may bring it up if we ever have a meeting, the MPEC. When the last time we had a meeting?
Well, if that's something too, if you want to bring it up,
Yeah, I
I'm
can
always
bring it up as well.
I'm
I
more
mean-
than happy to go if you want some backup.
Yeah, I mean, we got another meeting at some point, and I have.
Because
at
right
least
now their kind
4
of
to 6
official
members.
position is that they encourage more natural drainage as best possible,
Yeah,
but I think that's a little bit of lip service for encouragement.
That's only for the wellhead recharge.
Yeah. So, I mean, encourage is a word in regulations. That means you don't have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Not
really
told.
Oh, thank you, yeah.
Thanks for letting me know.
That's it. If you can, it would be great. But if you can't,
You may
we'll
do
find some
that.
other way.
It's like, that means I may not.
But that's it for me. I'm out of here.
all set.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Great.